Welcome to the Industry Angel Podcast. We hear from the best business minds across the globe. Entrepreneurs, social influencers, marketing mavens, and sales rock stars. We've got them all. Here comes your weekly dose of inspiration with your host, Ian Farah.
Welcome to episode 91 of the Industry Angel. Good to have you back. We've had an influx of new people actually listening to the show, and that's down to you. So thanks very much. Remember, I said to tell a friend. Well, it seems like you have. Also remember to keep in touch. All the social channels, well, not all of them, that would be a bit crazy, but enough for me to handle, which is Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Get me on email, host@industryangel.com. If you've been to an event or a conference and you've heard someone speak, why not drop me a line and maybe hook us up? We can get them on the show if you'd like. I seem to have a lot of requests coming lately, so I'm trying to schedule them all through. But I'm still trying to keep an eye on episode 100. I've got some ideas. I nearly told you there, but you're not getting it. So if this is your first episode, welcome aboard. If you click subscribe on your phone, you'll magically get the next and all future episodes remarkably to your device. So click that subscribe and leave a review, of course. Okay, I'm going to keep the shout outs for coming episode Angel Army because we've got work to do. Today we have a senior level communications and marketing professional with 20 years experience across multiple sectors and disciplines. A scale-up partner with the Scale Up Northeast program, she advises a portfolio of diverse high-growth businesses and helps them to tackle strategic challenges. Welcome to the Industry Angel, Laura Foster.
Hello, thanks for having me, Ian.
That was some bio.
Well, yeah, when you say it like that, I suppose it does sound quite impressive, but yeah.
Yeah, rock star. It's good. Do you know what it is on these bios? Some of the people I have on the show, I just get like so envious. It's like, and he's an author, adventurer, he's scale leverist, he's like, oh, and I've done nothing like that.
Oh, well, I think sometimes it's when you actually come to write these things down and you think, oh yeah, no, I've done a few things in my time. Just have to stop and look back, don't you, every now and then?
Or maybe look forward and scale Everest, and I can tell it.
Okay, I'll put that on the list. Yeah.
Right, it's on the bucket list. I've just wrote it down. So, Laura, you are about 9 miles from me.
Right, literally. Okay.
Mm-hmm. But that's not a Northeast accent.
It's not. No. My entire family are actually from the Northeast, just to make that clear at the outset. But yeah, I actually was born in London and spent the sort of formative part of my career, I guess, working in London. Started off working in the city, in investor relations, financial and corporate communications. And then, went to work in the NHS at the London Ambulance Service and eventually migrated my way to the Northeast. And I've actually lived here longer than anywhere else now. So it definitely feels like home, but the accent isn't one that you, I don't think the accent is one that you sort of pick up by osmosis. I think, you've got to, my accent's terrible when I try to do it anyway. So
yeah,
I won't try. No, don't worry.
I'll hear a few things dropped in though. You'll probably say like at the end of your sentences now after all these years.
After a couple of beers, maybe. Yeah.
So you mentioned about in the city. When was that? So in your 20s? Or?
Yeah, well, actually, I think I started when I was 19 or 20 because I did a very vocational first degree in public relations, and there was a requirement to spend your third year in industry. So, yeah, I started off earning 12 grand a year at a corporate communications consultancy in the city of London, living in Tottenham. And that was sort of 1998. So yeah, just turned 40. So blimey, that was a long time ago now. It was the dotcom boom. So they were quite heady days.
Yeah, but the music was amazing.
Well, I guess so. Yeah.
Can you not remember?
I'm more of a mid-90s.
Is it not much of a blur?
I'm more of a mid-90s girl, Ian, to be honest with you. I think, No, we went out a lot. We had a lot of fun. We
I bet you
definitely
did.
burned the candle at both ends back then.
Yeah. It's amazing. I look back now; it just seems so long ago, so long
Yeah,
ago. And actually, when we talk about those bios, that was just a different life.
yeah, yeah.
Come so far, I guess, and done so much.
Hmm.
But and that experience is just so golden and valuable, and that you can't buy it. You just have to live it. So, going back to the top of the show when I sort of talked about what you're doing now as a scale up partner, I guess that's invaluable now when you're working with businesses that you've had that experience, you've had that 20 years under your belt, and you've seen a lot across those years. To now share that with some of your clients, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's partly about location. There's no getting away from the fact that at that time in that space, in that place, there was you know, working with corporate financiers and advisors on sort of company flotations and starting to understand a bit more about the investment community and all of that stuff was really invaluable. It was a bit of a baptism of fire, but
Mm.
you do learn a lot by being thrown in at the deep end when you're young, I think, and I think it sort of frames your resilience, your professional resilience as you go through life. So I was never really had a plan, but as it turns out, as you say, it stood me in good stead to sort of go and work in strategic communication settings. And I think that's probably the common link between everything that I've done, is that it's always been in a strategic environment. And I really enjoy that, sort of marrying the strategic challenges that businesses or organizations face with the kind of creative solutions that you can bring to that.
Yeah, it reminded me of kind of my first roles. I was working for like some Rolls Royce and Siemens, so really large companies and
Yeah.
with huge process and systems in place. And as a young man, I thought, wow, this is just so stifling. It's not agile at all. I couldn't kind of move where I wanted to move. But actually, looking back, it taught me so much. So when you then go into an SME, it just seems much easier, and you kind
Yeah.
of know how everything seems to work and should work, and you can bring the good stuff from those large organizations to an SME, but then you can also use the SME agility as well alongside it.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that's obviously become so much more of a theme, hasn't it, of corporate life now, trying to bring in those more agile and entrepreneurial ways of working. So things are very different now, but in a good way, I would say. And being able to use all those different types of experiences in industry is really great, especially now, I was reading a blog post the other day. I just thought, how true is this, that that it's really not about what you've done and where you've been, but it's about the skills that you've developed along the way. And industry now and the employment market now is so much more open to, what can you do, what skills do you have, and what can you bring to the party, rather than just which PLC have you worked for, or what was your job title, why were you only here for 3 years, or it's things have moved on, definitely.
That's so right. And when I was in one of those early roles, I kind of knew I wasn't going to be there for so long. I wasn't going to be one of these guys that got the 25, 35 years, long service award, little medals and stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to one of my mentors, I'm sure I've mentioned this on the show before, we were doing an appraisal. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, so Ian, where do you see yourself in, 2-3 years? And I said, yeah, in your job. And it was really funny because it was just like this weird silence. I went, no, seriously.
You're not supposed to be honest, Ian.
And he kind of went, do you know what it is? I love that. And how can we get you there?
Oh, that's great.
And he said, actually, I want my boss's job. So let's make this happen. And it was, as you say, one of them things where I really wanted to gather the skills. I didn't just want to work for that company and just go through the motions. I actually wanted to do something whilst I was there to help me going forward. So it's a really good point you make, actually.
Yeah.
So let's talk about scale up, because you're on the scale up program. You're one of the scale up partners. So what does that mean? What does that mean to you then in the Northeast?
I was really attracted to this role because it is that in our corner of England, it is the sort of strategic solution, I guess, to nurturing the scale up ecosystem, which there's obviously a governmental agenda. There's probably a global agenda really behind the scale up sector, if you like, and supporting businesses that either have the potential to grow really fast or who are already growing really fast, and just helping to sort of overcome challenges that have the potential to adversely affect their growth. So for me, what that really means in real terms is, these businesses, if you can help them get over those challenges, then they can employ more people. They can, which then improves people's quality. Improves quality of life. It improves prospects for people, and especially young people in the region. We get companies, investing more in skills and talent. Then that's a good thing for everybody. So for me, the scale up agenda, it's born out of our strategic economic plan for the region, which is led by our local enterprise partnership, the Northeast Local Enterprise Partnership. But in real terms, it's, I think everybody on our team, we're very mindful of the fact that when we go out to these companies, we want them to grow. We want, we're pro business, but we're actually just really pro the development of our region. Which, like a lot of regions, has seen decline and it's seen change. So this feels a bit different. It feels a bit exciting because we do have that emphasis on job creation and on long-term growth for businesses that have either a proven track record or that certainly the potential to be very exciting high growth businesses.
It's interesting that you just dropped that last little phrase in there, high growth businesses. So thinking about a company that can scale up, are we talking about a particular company, the way it looks? So it's not a startup. It's been going X number of years. It has this number of employees. It turns over this amount of
Yeah. Well, we have. I think it's sort of open to interpretation depending on where you're working and what your agenda is. But for the Northeast, where we maybe have fewer scale ups than other parts of the country, but our metrics are really looking at periods of growth. So ideally, we would be looking at a business that's had 20%. Year-on-year growth over the last 3 years, either in terms of turnover or employment, and one that has a sound future in terms of where it's heading and the markets it's operating in. Having said that, there are a number of businesses on our books who have the potential to scale, and they may not have even been around for 3 years, let alone growing 20% for the last 3 years. So really, we're in those businesses, we're looking for that they're on the cusp of scaling, and they may have a product or a service innovation that's, it's the usual. It may be disrupting the market. It may be a company that is just extremely open to innovation, has some really interesting commercial partnerships coming along that mean it's going to really gain traction and steal market share somewhere. So you have to look. We try to look beyond the usual sort of stats and look at the nuances of that business and also the mindset of the people leading those businesses, and that's where our assessments become slightly more human in terms of when you're sitting eyeball to eyeball with these company owners, what is their passion and their appetite to grow that business and be open to new ideas, to employ people, because some businesses just want to grow sort of slowly or moderately or at a pace that suits the owner's lifestyle. And that's absolutely fine, obviously. But that's probably not a scale up. So we're looking for companies that are extremely ambitious, and I think it's probably fair to say have a slightly more are quite open to risk, not such that it's a risky investment with a small I, but that they're happy to take that risk in order to grow.
Really refreshing that there's not a real black and white criteria of what it is. I think what you're saying there is like, I guess, a bit when an investor invests in a company, they're often backing on the jockey rather than the horse. And if you can see that passion and you can really get a feel for who they are as a business, you can probably think, I can do something with these
Yeah.
So what sort of companies are there then? And have you been inundated with applications to work with the Scale Up program?
Yeah, well, we've had lots of applications. So we've had over 100 applicants to process so far. I think we've got about 130, 140 live clients at the moment. And it's, you think in a region the size of ours, for anyone listening, the Northeast is geographically it's quite large when you take in all the the national parks of Northumberland and all the rest of it, but actually in terms of our economic area it's relatively small. So you think if you keep track of local media and you're fairly well networked, that you sort of more or less know what's going on. And what this program has certainly shown me, is that actually there are so many companies just staying below the radar and growing really fast in such a broad range of sectors. So we have our, in the Northeast, we obviously have a really burgeoning tech community, and we have our our expertise in healthcare and life science and manufacturing and engineering, and I think everybody hears about those. But I've been sort of really pleasantly surprised to see so many more creative businesses, retail businesses, companies that are doing really innovative stuff. So, for example, third sector organisations looking to commercialise, working with the Citizens Advice, for example, in Gateshead, and looking at commercial services that they're starting to develop. So it's extremely varied, and that for us, for scale up partners, that makes life so interesting, because you're literally sort of might be working with a restaurant or food retailer one minute, and a manufacturer of widgets the next. So, but there are there are common themes between all of them, really, which is where the kind of the solutions that we come up with come into play.
Interesting you mentioned there about kind of third sector. My mind sort of steered towards public sector as well, because we're facing so much cuts now. They are becoming very commercially minded now. And obviously, as the demographic of the people that work in the business changes with the millennial mindset, they are very much now looking to what can we bring into the business rather than have to rely on funds and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And as I say, I think we're used to hearing the stories, the sort of commercial ambition stories from the private sector, because the people who work in those sectors and for those types of companies are sort of used to the art of self-promotion and getting their news out there. But as you say, there are a number of organisations up here, from social housing through to Citizens Advice, our own local authorities. They're being forced to do things differently, and that means becoming more commercial and engaging more with the private sector. And it may have come about as a result of necessity, but actually I think we're starting to see quite a lot more innovation in our region now, and the bridging of those two sectors, which is really great.
You did right, and if that hadn't happened, then that platform, that landscape to innovate wouldn't have been there. They would have just kind of relied on the funding that would come from the government maybe and just ticked along nicely. So out the face of adversity, sometimes special things can happen. So are those some of the things you see with your scale up partners? So maybe I'm thinking about a manufacturer who, for instance, might have been very heavily in the oil and gas industry, but now they might have been facing difficulties. Right, we need to get into renewables now. We need to get in the automotive. How are we going to do it? Are we going to create new products? How do we get into that kind of marketplace? You've kind of forced into these different routes. Is that something that you could help with within the program?
Absolutely, definitely. So for example, I'm working with a theatre company in the region who, there's been a lot of cuts to the arts sector, as we all know, and so they're now moving. They're using their physical space to do more and more sort of presentational training and performance training for the commercial market, and they're also looking to move into set design, which could actually lend itself well to the retail environment as well. So, there's a company that's, to all intents and purposes is known as a theatre, but actually it's moving into design in the retail environment. It's looking into sort of almost kind of management consultancy, That's it's just one example. I mean, there are many, many others on the program.
I'm beaming here because I love stories. As humans, we learn through stories, and that reminded me of I went to see a farmer once, and a farmer obviously growing crops on the land, but he wanted to diversify, and you'll probably see on farms now is things like cafe shops, and they'll put like pods or caravans or these sort of things to help supplement their income. I love hearing about those stories. I get so excited about it.
I mean, we went to visit. We're not working directly with them at the moment, but I went to visit Marlish Water out in Northumberland recently, and there's a great example of a former farming business that, as we all know, people in the Northeast now will be aware, has now sort of built a soft drinks plant and is now sort of supplying major retailers around the country with really premium tonic waters. So these examples are everywhere, aren't they? You've just got to kind of look for them, and they become apparent.
Definitely. So just going back to that scale up program. So what does it look like then? Do you do like kind of, I don't know, 3 days or 5 a week, or what does it what does it look like?
Sort of on just what's my working week like? Is that what you mean?
No, I was thinking, so, I've applied to be on your Scale Up program. You're one of the partners. And does that mean that you work within my business once a week, or do I get you for longer? Or?
Well, it can do. It can mean that it really depends on where the client's at and what the client needs, which I know is a very vague answer, but the process involves initially an application and an assessment of that company's eligibility and suitability for the program. So looking at the factors that we were talking about earlier in terms of appetite for growth and capacity for growth. And then we sort of run through, really, assuming they're eligible, we will then run through an action planning phase, which is doing what we call a kind of deeper dive into that business to look at the areas of strategic importance and those areas that are perhaps needing a little bit of attention or specialist consultancy, perhaps. So we know that scale-up businesses, the research tells us, and this is definitely sort of starting to bear out in our project, that scale-ups tend to reach a certain level. Things are doing really well. Perhaps they've perhaps never formalized what they do and how they're doing it. And so the issues that you come up against, particularly where a business has been led by one person or one or two people, owner managers, and all of a sudden they need to employ to grow, create capacity for growth, which brings with it all sorts of challenges, risks that need to be taken. And that's when you find that the typical themes that come up are, and in this region, access to talent is particularly relevant. So access to talent, access to markets, leadership capabilities within the team, sales and marketing. So sometimes companies are just literally, how do we sell more stuff? We know the demand's out there, but we need to develop our own internal systems and processes around sales. Access to finance, we need to bridge a gap that we have in terms of being able to invest, in our business. So how do we get the finance? What kind of finance should we be looking at? How much equity does this business want to retain? All those sorts of questions. And sometimes it's about infrastructure, where to open that new office, how to physically develop the company's profile. So we might home in on one of those areas and say, if you can solve this, if you can just, for example, work out how you can sell more stuff without compromising the quality of your product or service, if you can scale your sales strategy, then you're sorted. So we might focus on that, and we might build a series of solutions around that. So we put on a series of masterclasses. We actually just held our first sales strategy masterclass yesterday, which went really well. So that's when we bring in our partners and our solutions providers to host workshops and masterclasses, which our clients is free to attend. And then we'll talk about what falls out of that, what plans that company is going to make, what that company's learned. we may then facilitate introductions to experts who can help the companies longer term. We might do some one-to-one planning ourselves, depending on our backgrounds and our areas of expertise. So it's completely tailored to what that company needs. And sometimes that's a very broad range of perhaps that company just needs pretty much every aspect, of their business perhaps needs addressing in a strategic fashion, and that's fine. But in some cases, it's just getting down to one very specific issue.
What's the trend at the moment then? What are people looking for? What is there a trend that you see? Is it sales and marketing? Is it skills? Is it all these things?
All of the above, but yes, particularly sales and marketing is. I mean, we've started to curate our solutions as we go based on what companies need. So sales and marketing was a workshop that we're very keen to put on because it was coming up time and again. So just helping companies to really kind of get some discipline around sales and marketing and client relationship management, for example. Access to talent is a particularly biting issue for lots of companies, particularly those in the in the technology sector. And I guess it's a challenge for the Northeast, isn't it, to try and attract, on a more general basis, to try and attract talent up to our region, where we have so many exciting tech companies based. So we're going to cover the whole gambit, but leadership, which is obviously a very broad term, but leadership is another area that I think we're going to be looking at soon. As companies move from startup to scale up status, they obviously need to be those owner managers need to be leaders of people. So that requires really investing in their own leadership capabilities.
I've seen a real appetite, for companies now to want to do this kind of thing, leadership and skills and commercial kicking on. And it's really become a bit more apparent to them now that they need to do this. And I co-deliver a monthly Boost Your Business course. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's in the Northeast. Yeah. So I do the digital side of that, and then we also go through an enterprise award. And it's so rewarding when you hear these people that they just really want to now learn and kick on. And I was talking to a guy the other day, and he was like saying, "Where could I go?" And I said, "Well, have you heard about this?" And he hadn't. And what, you could go to this networking event, hadn't heard about it. What about this agency? They'll be able to help. And I was a little bit, I don't know, I was just a bit, I was feeling a bit good, really, that people didn't know that all this existed. And one of the things that I'm hearing about is that there's lots of acronyms and lots of these agencies and lots of these communities, and they don't really collaborate with each other. And I don't know why I've gone off on this tangent, but do you think that's the case?
I think it's consolidated a bit because of the the cuts that have been made to some of the funding that we've had available to us to fund some of these sort of business consultancy initiatives. But I definitely think, very generally speaking, that there is at times a lack of joined up thinking around how we club together to find the right services and the right signposts for companies. But I think our LEP, our local enterprise partnership in the Northeast, is making real strides towards joining some of that up. So, for example, their growth hub, the growth hub initiative, which provides a sort of an umbrella home for lots and lots of events and initiatives, so many of which are free to attend. And as you say, sometimes it's just knowing where to look, isn't it? If you're a company and, it's one thing to sort of diagnose that you have an issue, and sometimes that takes ages to get to that point. If you're running a business day to day, you're perhaps just getting sort of slightly stressed with all the issues that you've got going on inside your business, and then you move to the stage where you're working on the business, and then you've got to try and work out actually where you access those resources, and that can become slightly overwhelming. And I think that's where that sort of ignorance might stem from, because people are just busy doing their own work and working in the business. So I think the LEP's doing a lot to join all of that up. and this sort of scale up ecosystem that we're trying to develop now means that, for example, our scale up program links in and refers to other programs in the region. So, if a company isn't suitable for scale up, we will signpost off to, for example, the Growth Hub, or we might signpost off to one of the other programs that are run here at RTC North, which delivers the scale up program on behalf of the LEP. So I'm now, certainly like you, I'm sort of now desperate for companies to know what is out there. But prior to joining this program and becoming a scale up partner, I wasn't really aware of it either, to be honest. So hopefully that's a byproduct of the scale up initiative, that we can help those individual businesses, but perhaps raise the profile of what's available in the region as well.
Yeah, 100%. And if anyone's listening, it's northeastgrowthhub.co.uk, I think.
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah. So that would be a good place to start. And yeah, I totally love that. We just need to shout up the rooftops a bit more, because back in the day, what I would see is a lot of people are interested in finance. Where can they get some funding or grant funding? But actually, what they want now is that kind of those support programs. Those boot camps, those 1-day masterclasses. There's such an appetite for it, and they come away just so enthused and motivated. And it's not just about the money or the grant; it's just about that helping people to get to the next stage. It's really rewarding when you're on the other side and when you're delivering this kind of stuff as well, isn't it?
Oh, it definitely is. And to your point, I think the the peer-to-peer stuff, that when you begin to put people in a room to just by putting people in a room together and getting them to share their experiences, doesn't sound terribly scientific or strategic approach, but actually, you might put on a workshop for companies who all share a certain challenge, and they end up developing longer term contacts with one another. They may even start to do business together, and you start to create quite organically a community of people who feel like they're supporting one another. And I know that the Scale Up Academy that's run by the Entrepreneurs Forum in the Northeast, I know that's one of, talking to clients who've actually been on that, they say that was one of the really big positive impacts of that program was that creation of that community, and that gives individuals the confidence to actually go forward with their ideas, because as we all know, it can be quite lonely running a business.
That is such a good point. When we run our monthly courses, there is a kind of Facebook group they can join when they leave.
Yeah.
And the collaborations I see are just amazing. People come together and just say, what can we do? I'm really interested in this, but actually that's not my full-time job, but I've got a real passion for that. Well, I have as well. Maybe we could do something together. And, one that springs to mind is a lady that now is doing was a personal trainer, but now she's doing a collaboration with someone in Pilates, and they're putting a new program on. So It's just amazing how they can support each other. And it is such a lonely journey. And I think sharing that journey and just bouncing things off each other is so rewarding. So if anyone was listening to this and they were feeling quite head down, they didn't know where these, masterclasses were or initiatives were, we just need to get them to pop their head above the parapet, do some Googling around and just find out what's in your area, because getting that network and collaborations is just it's so valuable. I cannot speak enough about it, because you just never know what's around the corner when you spend some time with other delegates and learners, what can come from it.
Exactly. And I think it's a really good way of getting people who don't like to network. Very few people actually enjoy walking into a room full of strangers and, preferring their hand and introducing themselves. I mean, it's just, and it comes with a lot of practice as well, just being able to be comfortable with that. So I think the sort of structured learning environment where, there is a very real point to you being there, that then gives you permission to talk to people without that being the imperative, if you know what I mean. So it's kind of, it's a really good way for people just, open yourself. I would absolutely echo what you've just said in terms of, if sometimes it can get very lonely and very frustrating when you're trying to run a business. lifting your head above the parapet, finding some kind of learning opportunity that looks vaguely relevant to what you're doing as a company. I'd be very surprised if there's a single instance where, somebody goes to an event like that and doesn't meet somebody or find out something that could help them. And from that point onwards, it's about putting, it's actually part of the job, isn't it? You've got to make time for it. I was director of a PR agency up here, and when our business was going really, really well, the temptation is to just sort of focus on clients the whole time, but you've actually got to step back and treat yourself like a customer, and treat your own business as a client and say, right, how do I need to nurture our company's growth? And often that is about getting out and meeting people and taking advantage of the many, many opportunities that there are to engage with others in similar situations.
You're dead right. I think episode 89 was the power of networking, and basically that kind of spurred me from Newcastle Startup Week, because it wasn't one of those ones where it was a regular networking event where everyone's a business development manager with a stack of cards and trying to sell to each other. It was literally, as you say, a learning environment, 5 days, citywide festival of just inspiration and different days across the week. But everybody was there to learn, and then inevitably you're talking to the person next to you, your network, and it was just absolutely amazing to see for the region. So yeah, there's stacks of things going on like that which are outside of the typical networking events. It's a reason that you come together, to learn, but actually off the back of it, you're actually networking as well.
Absolutely. I mean, as you say, Startup Week's just been so fantastic for this region, and other kind of now really big calendar events like the Thinking Digital conference, which isn't obviously just for businesses in the tech space, but as you say, they provide that opportunity to just get really infused and rub shoulders with other people and learn a lot, but also have a lot of fun. So that's
too right.
As well. Yeah.
Well, Newcastle Startup Week did have after parties every night, so yes, there was a little bit too much fun.
Well, I think you can still put that on the timesheet, can't you? So
it's funny, I've spoken about this in the past about actually allowing yourself to do things like that, allowing yourself to go network and not thinking that you're just sort of skiving a bit,
Yeah.
Even books, I think I've mentioned on this show behind me, I get sent quite a lot of books from guests, and I haven't read them all. And I just think, you actually should put a bit of time in your diary to self-learn and read. And it's not actually skiving.
No, definitely not. I mean, I have 2 young children, so I don't get to read very often at all, really, unless it's a storybook. But it is a luxury, and like you say, it's one that I try to sort of listen to TED Talks instead, because it's so much more, or listen to podcasts because it's so much more.
Thank you very much.
The Industry Angel podcast, obviously. No. So it's it's something that when you do it, you think, I should do this more often. I'm just buzzing with ideas, and there's things that I can take away immediately and implement in my current, situation with a client or with my business.
Definitely. So there you go. There's a call to action for any team leaders, managers, business owners. You now have to give your employees a couple of hours a week to sit in the corner and read a book with a cup of tea.
I saw that you'd posted that recently, actually, on LinkedIn. It was like a challenge that you'd made, and I thought that was a very good one.
About starting your day. Starting your day off.
Just giving your employees a rota and saying, everybody gets to come in 45 minutes later. I'd probably end up doing more washing at the moment, but but as long as it's used on something that will nurture you as an individual, then I think that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, so you're not allowed to do the washing. That's not what it was about. And I need evidence of this. So yes, actually, go to my LinkedIn profile and watch that video. I'm going to do another one, actually. I'm going to talk about exercise on the next one as well. Yeah. So keep an eye out for that one.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, so I'm looking at the clock, and we're in about 30 odd minutes now. So Laura, I've really enjoyed that. Thanks so much for all your interest and background as well. I love when we hear about stories where people have come from, and you never really know what your journey's ahead of you, is it? It just comes organically, and it sounds like yours has.
It's been a bit of a bit of a mixed bag of experiences. But I've really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
No worries, and quite a lot of content in there for listeners, especially the Northeast. So if you're outside the Northeast, sorry, we got a little bit self-indulgent, but hey, we're allowed to every so often.
The Northeast, great.
Nice one to leave it at. There you go.
Right.
Okay, cheers, Laura. Thanks to Laura there. So what did we take from that? Well, businesses can be at varying stages in their lives and don't necessarily have to fit into a box, i.e. start-up, scale-up, established business. But the important question is, what is that business aiming to achieve and what does it need to get there? What help does it need? Does it need extra resource, particular skills, finance, funding, mentorship maybe? So I encourage you to research what's out there in your area for business support. We've spoke about our local enterprise partnership, the Northeast LEP, but there are another 30-something LEPs around the country, all playing a central role to drive economic growth and the creation of local jobs. That's why they're there. And of course, in your country, there'll no doubt be a similar state and territory business resource to assist your business. You don't have to go it alone. You might want to take a new product to market, internationalize, add additional resource, purchase some new planned equipment, whatever. Reach out, ask the question, have a conversation. This is why those programs are there. So capitalize on them, use them. So until next time, I'm Ian Farrer. This is the Industry Angel. Thanks for listening.